Hey, so we've covered stand-up comedy. Daniel's talked about spoken word. We're going to delve into another sort of subgenre of stand-up and talk to Jim, who's one quarter of Gaines Family Gift Shop. Hey, Jim. Jim's also a stand-up comedian in his own right. Jim, fire away.
Hey Doc, you alright mate?
How's it going, man? You alright?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm in Gaines Family Gift Shop. We're a sketch group. We often have to perform on stand-up comedy bills, and that can sometimes be quite difficult. But it can be interesting, particularly when the crowd's after just straight stand-up and they have to see some people go on stage acting.
Yeah.
Even is acting out jokes. But basically, I wanted to ask you about how you think a sketch group could get noticed a bit easier, not necessarily just on stage, but it's undergoing a bit of a resurgence at the moment. In Edinburgh this year, there's been a few sketch groups who've had good runs and who've had nice turns of it, but I think it's still quite a hard genre for the average person to get into. What would you recommend to stand out with sketch?
Well, I think you're right. I think it is a really tough arena, particularly in this day and age. Because I mean, I think we spoke about this in person, but I believe that the sketch format, it's not moribund, but it's dated. You know, like whenever I see it on TV, I'm like, wow, they're still making stuff like this. It just something about it feels really 80s. I think what it is the it's the crassness of the links. It's the awkwardness of how you seek from one sketch into another. And for me, the thing that's going to really push sketch comedy on is those moments. It's not even the punchline in the sketches. It's how you seek from one sketch into another. I think that's the true genius. And I think that's what's lacking from a lot of sketch comedy that I see. I think it's a real struggle. It's exactly the same in stand-up. How do you go from one joke into the next without it sounding clunky? How do you make it sound conversational? It's easier for us because with time we find the links. They almost come up naturally because you know what sounds natural to say and what doesn't sound natural to say. With sketch, you can go on a real flight of fancy, you know. And
that's what we often find with the sketches, the segues in between them. I think we've almost just cut them out because, as you were saying, I think it looks very dated if you have like blackouts in between every sketch or something like that.
You see it on TV all the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and just cut to this one. What's a little more interesting is when people try and look at the like the full product. So you know, if you look at the Pajama Man, their sketches are all slotted within what is essentially like a kind of hour-long movie, you know, which has a beginning, a middle, and an end, with the sketches throughout, adding somewhat to the plot of the story. And I'd never seen anything like that before. You know, I think you could maybe look to maybe like League of Gentlemen, people like that who've tried to add story or tie together things that were clearly sketches once upon a time. But yeah, I think that stuff really, really works. Although saying that, the Pajama Men has never ever worked on television, and they've been going for, I don't know, maybe 20 years.
Yeah, I've never seen them on TV, but I saw their show a couple of years ago, and it blew my mind. It was great.
Incredible. All their live stuff is incredible, but it just doesn't operate for some reason on television. So I think it's a huge upward climb that you're on. But if I had your talent, which is considerable, I mean, I really, really like the gift shop stuff. But if I had your abilities, I think my focus would be on developing the characters that have the most legs and trying to slot them into something with a story structure. Because what you've got is a number of parts that are all hilarious, right? But there's much, much less funny sitcoms on television that just have likable characters at their heart, you know? and beginnings, middles, and ends, and stories that people can follow, and that's why they're successful. If you can combine that with the irreverence of the standalone sketches that you've got, then you're onto a massive winner. But the key thing is, what is that place, what is that location, so to speak, physically or metaphorically, where those sketches live? And the obvious thing is to say, oh, look, let's set it in a hotel. There's so many different rooms with different people. That's just been done to deth, like so many times.
One of us can sell carpets for a living.
Yeah. Look at something like 15 stories high, and they've set it in, a tower block. So it's got an element of that hotel thing, but they've thrown in a little bit of social comment in it. The tower block feels very, very real. It feels very much like a council estate with the kind of characters that you see on a council estate, I mean, I heard about some comedy that came out recently on the BBC website set in a chicken shop, right? Like, a Chicken George or Chicken Village or whatever.
Yeah.
And like the three people that worked behind the counter were all white and middle class. And I was like, you taking the piss? I've literally never walked, have you ever, in the history of the kingdom, ever walked into a chicken shop and met anyone middle class of any colour behind that counter? Anyone other than a Bangladeshi immigrant? Because I haven't.
Yeah.
Right? And I just thought, this is bullshit. I don't believe in this world. Whereas if you watch 15 Stories High, they very carefully weaved in a number of sketches into a world that is very, very real. And there's some surprisingly surreal moments within that real world. But you go with it because you're like, actually, I buy it. I buy that this place exists. And I buy that these characters exist. And I think that's probably the next step for you guys, because you're going to kill the sketch circuit. There's no question about that. However, we don't have the sketch rock and roll stars we used to, I had dinner with David Baddiel a couple of nights ago, and we were talking about how the Mary Whitehouse experience, when I was a kid, watching that, those guys were like rock stars, they played Wembley,
I've seen that video, yeah, it's mad.
Yeah, I saw them at the Hammersmith Apollo, and I just can't think of any sketch group now that would play venues that massive. If anything, it's like the last thing that happens after a successful TV show. So, when I was in Melbourne, I saw like Mrs. Brown's Boys had like a live show. But that was only as a result of a very successful television show before that. Whereas back in the day, you had sketch guys who were going from the stage to huge stages, to huge TV shows, and beyond, into cinema and whatnot. And I mean, there's no question you guys can act. There's no question you guys can write, and you're going to get offers thrown at you. I'm sure this already happened. What you've got to be really, really careful of is not doing like that thing of just saying yes to the first person that offers you, a very vague package where it's just and we just put all these together, have a cool theme tune, we'll set it like it'll be a flat share, and then, all of a sudden you're giving away your best stuff for a format that doesn't really suit you. So I think the first thing to do is just to try and invent some interesting segues that we've never really seen before on stage. I think that's the very first thing. Because that's what you guys are the masters of right now. I mean, your videos are awesome, but the videos you don't really need to worry that much about because they can all just be standalone for now. You just have minute, 2 minute, 3 minute vids that are amazing. I mean, have you ever seen what's it called? Is it called Oscar-winning movie? You ever seen that sketch?
Oh yeah, where it's like overruled and just shouting out all the emotions and things.
Yeah, they're actually saying the emotions of the movie. It's one of the great sketches I've ever seen, I think. It's just hilarious and clever from start to finish, and those guys got a huge deal just off the back of that.
Yeah.
They had literally nothing to follow. They just hadn't thought, oh, right, okay, so now we need to do like 10 of these. How do we... They just had no idea, and you don't want to get stuck in that rut. But did you watch High Maintenance?
I don't think I've seen that. No.
Did I tell you about it when we met?
I'm not sure.
Maybe I
Which
didn't.
one was it?
Please get on Vimeo and watch High Maintenance, because that'll be hugely inspiring. Because it's very low key, like your stuff. It's very subtle, very intelligently written, but it's got a really original segue that I just haven't seen before, right? So it's just all about this kind of new middle class in New York, right? These sort of young nouveau riche guys who work in various wanky arenas like media and stuff. But I guess the kind of running gag is that they're all this new level of broke because they live in New York. It's just like in London. Like, you might come from a wealthy background or whatever, but that's not helping when the rent is like more expensive than anything you can afford. So they're all living in hovels, basically, living these kind of middle class lifestyles in hovels. And in each episode, you meet a new character or two, normally like 3 or 4, but often it'll be like 2 people who share a flat, might be in a relationship or whatnot. And just the writing in terms of what's going on in their lives is very real, very close to the bone, and brilliantly done. But what links them all together is a weed dealer. He's a guy who he sells weed to all of these people, and he's the reason that we go inside these homes and inside these lives. And you really kind of buy it because he's a funny character himself, and the guy who plays the weed dealer is the guy that wrote and created it.
Right.
And it's just a great reason to go and meet these people, and you just buy it, you know. And it's like when you watch it, it's like that's the idea, that's the thing that's melding this whole thing together. That's just perfect, you know. And I would definitely recommend watching that for a bit of inspiration. But yeah, I'd say this segue first. But you're in the right arena. I mean, you're doing gigs for the Invisible Dot, and I think they're very forward-thinking, progressive thinking when it comes to sketch comedy. And once you're up there in the Invisible Dot, you know, you're sharing stages with the best sketch guys we've got in the country, you know. So, you know, that's another form of inspiration, I think, or you should take it as that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you very much. Cheers.
Pleasure.